Will you join me for prayer? Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. How many of you wake up feeling anxious more mornings than not? So I'm not the only one in the room. I do. Most mornings I wake up with tension in my body. I can feel it in my gut. Much as I'd like to, I typically don't wake up filled with gratitude and deep appreciation. I don't wake up with the words of the psalmist ringing in my ears. This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Most mornings, I wake up feeling a little overwhelmed by all of the things that I need to take care of in the hours and the days and the weeks to come. The first voice that I hear in my head is usually the voice of everything coming up, the deadlines that are looming, the projects that are not yet complete, the difficult decisions that need to be made, the challenges that need to be faced. Most mornings I wake up with a lot of worry about all of the things that I need to take care of and all of the details that need to be worked out. I usually have to pray myself calm in the morning. As my thoughts race forward to the long list of challenges ahead and my gut begins to churn, I have to consciously focus my thoughts on verses of Scripture that calm me and recenter me. Be still and know that I am God. I am exalted among the nations. I am exalted in the earth. Even though I've heard the passage that Emily Joy read for us this morning more than 100 times, every time I hear those familiar words of Jesus, it stops me short. There's a part of me that feels embarrassed about being reminded again of something so obvious that I seem to have so much difficulty holding on to. Oh yeah, it's not all up to me. I'm not in charge of the world. God has been holding the universe together from the first day of creation and doing a pretty good job of it even without my help. It's true. Oh yeah. Even if things don't work out exactly the way I had planned, it'll be all right. It will be all right. Oh yeah. God does provide. The ravens, remember? They neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns. Remember the lilies? They neither toil nor spin, yet Solomon in all of his glory. Oh yeah. Worrying doesn't add an hour to the span of my life, so knock it off. Every time I hear those words of Jesus, do not worry, do not be afraid, it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. There is a part of me that suddenly wakes up and says, oh yeah, God's got this. But it isn't a perspective that I can hold for very long. Before I know it, I've got myself all worked up again in anticipation of whatever needs taken care of next. Most mornings, I wake up worrying and have to pray myself calm. In her book, The Gift of Years, Joan Chittister writes about a deep appreciation that we develop over the years for the ordinary things that are part of normal, everyday life. When the pace of our lives begins to slow down, when we stop racing from one appointment to the next, when we aren't hurrying to meet as many deadlines looming over us, then we become much more attentive to the present moment. We stop focusing so much of our time and energy on things that are coming up in the future, and we begin to appreciate the preciousness of life in the here and now. In her chapter on appreciation, Chittister writes, when we can no longer walk as fast as we once did, we come to see all the individual flowers, the cracks in the sidewalk, the children along the way, all more clearly, all more consciously than we ever did in the past. It seems as if one of the functions of aging is to give us the capacity to see what we've missed all the years before. Last Wednesday, when I met with some of our seniors at North Point Woods, Pat Korest observed that painting fills her with a deep sense of appreciation. She doesn't worry about anything when she's painting because all of her attention is focused on the subject that she's portraying on a canvas. When you're painting, you have to look very closely at something to see all of its inherent beauty before you can represent it with strokes of color on a canvas. A painting hanging on a wall literally frames our attention. It draws our focus to one small thing in the entire universe so that we can appreciate it more deeply. Georgia O'Keeffe, the contemporary American artist famous for her beautiful flower paintings, once said, "Nobody sees a flower, really. It's so small. We haven't time. And to see takes time. Like to have a friend takes time." A month ago, when Patrice and I were on vacation, we spent 3 days in Manistee, Michigan, a small town 50 miles south of Traverse City, where Patrice and I lived for the first 15 years of our life after seminary. We stayed in a beautiful studio apartment in Harbor Village, a condo development that was built just before we left Manistee and moved to Rochester about 20 years ago. From our front window, we could look out and see Lake Michigan as we ate our morning breakfast. We took our kayaks along and launched them from the Fifth Avenue beach, just a few hundred yards from where we were staying. On a calm morning, we paddled out around the lighthouse and up the channel that connects Lake Michigan with Lake Manistee. We saw a thick cloud of turkey vultures rise up in a swirl at the edge of the lake and wondered what had drawn them all together. We passed beautiful boats tied up in the municipal marina with names of distant ports painted on their sterns. We paddled into a yacht basin surrounded by luxury condos and fantasized about what it would be like to have our own giant sailboat tied up in our front yard. We paddled past charter boats that were getting ready to take people out onto the big lake, fishing for salmon and lake trout and steelhead. We paddled past some tourists who were enjoying their morning coffee as they strolled along the Riverwalk. We had spent 15 years living in Manistee, but I had never seen the things that we saw that morning in the 2 hours that we paddled our kayaks. They were all places I knew about, but I hadn't ever fully appreciated their beauty. Mostly I had glanced at them out the side window of the car as I drove across the Maple Street Bridge on my way to my next appointment. Each day of our vacation in Manistee, we took long walks on the beach and appreciated the incredible beauty of the Michigan Lake shore. That delicate balance between the dune grass and the encroaching sand, steady breezes and relentless waves. I found myself thinking, wouldn't it be great to live here and have access to this incredible beauty every day? And then I reminded myself, I did live here. I lived here 15 years. Our house was just 4 blocks away from Lake Michigan. But I had never fully appreciated where I was. As a newly ordained pastor, I was eager to prove myself worthy of my calling. I was busy visiting our members, learning about the community, looking for signs of vitality that we could build on, figuring out how to preach a compelling sermon week after week after week. Soon after I started my pastorate in Manistee, we undertook this major renovation project to restore the sanctuary of our beautiful historic church building. I learned nothing about how to do that in seminary, and so it was a steep learning curve for me. After our first year, Patrice and I bought a home that was built at the turn of the century that was basically uninhabitable. So every free minute was spent researching the next project and reading my home renovator's Bible, buying building materials, working on the house. And then shortly after my 5th year, I started commuting all the way down to Kalamazoo to attend Western Michigan University to start working on a master's in counseling psychology so I could start a part-time job in a community mental health counseling agency. Even when I did have some free time on my hands, the things that I did for recreation were usually pretty fast-paced. If I was on my mountain bike, I was racing along the North Country Trail at a pace that kept my heart pounding too fast for me to really appreciate the beauty of the Manistee River corridor that the trail followed. Every other morning, I was out running on Lakeshore Road with my friend Brent Danielson, and even though the road runs right along the Lake Michigan shore, we really weren't out to take in the scenery. We were trying to stay fit and get a good workout in before going to our sedentary desk jobs. When Patrice and I took off backpacking with friends on the Manitou Islands or the Porcupine National Forest up in the UP or the Pigeon River State Forest over in the Thumb area, I was often so preoccupied with getting from where we were to where our next campsite would be that I never fully appreciated the beauty of the forest that we were walking through on the way. In the 15 years that we lived in Manistee, I had never taken 3 consecutive days to sit quietly and look at Lake Michigan, listen to the rhythmic sound of the waves washing onto the shore, watch the sun plunge beneath its horizon at the close of the day. What I realized when we were vacationing in Manistee last month is that it's not the place, it's the pace that makes the difference. It's not the place, it's the pace. Appreciation is something that can only be experienced in the present moment. It's not an experience that comes from the anticipation of something we're looking forward to in the future. It's the deep valuing of experiences that are only available to us in the here and now. I appreciate who you are today. I appreciate being together with you now. I appreciate the beauty of this place that I'm in. I appreciate the experience that we're having together this moment. Again, in her chapter on appreciation, Joan Chittister writes these words: when there's little else in life to do but live well. Life itself becomes all the more precious, all the more striking in its many layers of beauty. Shells on the beach become artifacts fit for keeping. Wind on a dry day becomes a new insight into the glare of creation. Someone else's smile bonds us to the entire human community. The problem may simply be that we take so long to be shocked by the power of normalcy. Worry is driven by our desire to control the future, to plan out in advance how everything will unfold according to our own expectations. But appreciation lives in the present moment. It is always available to us, wherever we are, whenever we take the time to be shocked by the power of normalcy. Amen.